What happens when a former president takes the stage and turns a campaign rally into a direct attack on one of the most controversial members of Congress? And why did the room go silent before it exploded? Tonight, we break down a speech that didn't just stir headlines, it stirred something much deeper in America's political divide. President Donald Trump, known for fiery rhetoric, took things even further Tuesday night. His message wasn't subtle, it wasn't coded, it wasn't diplomatic. It was raw, targeted, and unmistakably personal. He ramped up his anti-immigrant rhetoric, focusing not just on border security, but on immigration outside of Europe, a phrase critics say reveals a deeper, more troubling sentiment. And then he went after Democratic Rep. Ilhan Omar. Trump didn't just criticize her policy, or her votes, or her statements. He used her as a symbol of immigration, identity, political tension, and everything his base believes is wrong with Washington. But here's the question for you watching right now. Do you think Trump talks about Ilhan Omar to highlight policy differences, or is she being used to drive emotional reaction from his crowd? Comment below. I read every perspective. When Trump mentioned Omar's name, the crowd reacted instantly. Some cheered, some booed, some looked surprised, waiting to hear where he would go with it. He accused her of being ungrateful, of hating America, of representing everything that's wrong with immigration, in his words. But this wasn't just a political attack. It was a strategic moment designed to trigger a cultural flashpoint. Because Ilhan Omar isn't just a Democrat. She's an immigrant. She's black. She's Muslim. She represents a district that looks nothing like Trump's base. And Trump knows exactly what that combination means on a debate stage. But here's the real question. Why Omar? Why now? And why this aggressively? Just think about it. Trump could have talked about border policy. He could have talked about asylum reform. He could have talked about national security. Instead, he chose a single person to embody the issue, someone who's been a lightning rod for years. This wasn't accidental. This was calculated. Because political strategists know one thing. Voters don't rally behind policy details. They rally behind symbols, faces, names, stories. And tonight, Trump made Ilhan Omar the face of the immigration fight. But let's ask you, do you think this tactic unites voters or divides them even further? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know where America stands. As the speech continued, Trump shifted to a broader narrative, complaining specifically about immigration outside of Europe. Now pause right there. What does that mean to you? Because millions of Americans heard that line and asked themselves, is this about security or something deeper? Is this about legality or about identity? Is this about immigration or about who belongs in America? And depending on where you sit politically, the answer sounds very different. For some, Trump is simply echoing concerns about uncontrolled migration, overwhelmed cities, and broken systems. For others, his wording feels like a dog whistle, a message crafted to appeal to fears about cultural change. Where do you fall in this spectrum? Be honest, your comment may surprise people. But one thing is undeniable. Trump knows that immigration is emotional. Border footage, migrant buses, overwhelmed shelters, these images shape public opinion faster than any statistic ever could. And when you combine that with a polarizing figure like Ilhan Omar, you create a moment designed to dominate headlines, which it did. But that's only the surface. Behind the scenes, Republicans and Democrats reacted in very different ways, some quietly, some aggressively, some strategically. We'll break all of that down, because tonight's speech wasn't just a soundbite. It was a preview of the campaign ahead, a preview of the fight for Congress, a preview of the ideological war over what America should look like in the next decade. This is not just about Omar, not just about Trump, not just about immigration. This is about identity. Who counts as American? Who gets to define patriotism? Who gets to decide what threats look like? Those were the questions hidden inside Trump's speech, and they're the questions shaping the political battlefield heading into 2026. But the real earthquake started after Trump left the stage. Inside Washington, phones lit up, meetings scrambled, and both parties realized something. This wasn't just rhetoric. This was a political warning shot. When Trump finished attacking Ilhan Omar and criticizing immigration outside of Europe, the crowd might have cheered, but the people watching in Washington, they weren't cheering. They were calculating. Because Trump didn't just target Omar, he targeted the entire debate around who gets to call America home. And the political fallout started immediately. Within minutes of the speech ending, Democratic strategists were on conference calls, some furious, some worried, some ready to weaponize Trump's comments for the election. One Democratic aide leaked this reaction. He didn't attack policy, he attacked identity, and that changes everything. But here's the question for you watching right now. Did Trump cross a line, or is he saying what millions quietly feel? Comment honestly. The entire country is split on this. As Democrats reacted emotionally, Republicans reacted strategically. A senior GOP strategist described it like this. That speech tells us Trump is going back to the 2016 playbook: identity politics, culture wars, immigration fear. It works. People respond to it. And that's the truth, whether critics like it or not. But let's go behind the scenes, because the most revealing moment happened inside the Capitol, not on stage. Late that night, several Republican lawmakers gathered in a private room, not officially, just talking, sharing reactions. Most supported Trump's message, but a few expressed concerns. One asked, "Do we really want the election to be about Ilhan Omar again?" Another replied, "If he's talking about her, it means he's talking about immigration, and immigration moves numbers." Think about that. Omar isn't the target. Omar is the symbol, the spark, the emotional trigger, and Trump knows how to use triggers. But here's where things get even more explosive. Intelligence officials, the people who monitor threats, polarization, international reactions, were not happy. Within 24 hours, an internal DHS memo circulated, warning that polarizing rhetoric against identifiable individuals increases threats against members of Congress. In simple terms, when Trump targets Omar, threat levels spike. And no matter what side you're on, that's a problem. Now I want to ask you directly. Should political leaders avoid targeting individuals, or is it fair game if they're public officials? Tell me in the comments. America is divided on this answer. Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar's office released a response, carefully worded, measured, but firm. She accused Trump of fueling hate, endangering immigrants, and distracting from policy failures. Her team said they're used to the attacks, but they're also monitoring threats closely. And trust me, they're not exaggerating. Every time her name trends, congressional security tightens around her district offices, her public appearances, and her personal life. It's real, and it's serious. But here's the part no one expected. After the speech, immigration advocacy groups saw a surge, a spike in donations, volunteers, outreach, even protests. Because whenever Trump leans into anti-immigrant rhetoric, it activates both sides. Supporters get louder, opponents get louder, the middle gets smaller. And that is the political calculation you need to understand. This speech wasn't about Omar, it wasn't about Europe, it wasn't even about immigration. It was about drawing lines, a line between us and them, a line between America then and America now. A line between the voters Trump wants and the voters he's willing to lose. But ask yourself and comment below, does drawing those lines make America stronger or more divided? And now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Why did Trump specifically emphasize immigration outside of Europe? Because politically, it works. Polling has shown for years that Americans react differently to immigration depending on origin. It's uncomfortable, it's controversial, but it's data. Trump knows exactly what he's tapping into. Questions about culture, identity, assimilation, change. These are the issues many political campaigns avoid because they're too explosive. Trump doesn't avoid them, he weaponizes them. And this is why Tuesday night's speech wasn't just a campaign rally, it was a preview of Trump's 2026 messaging strategy. Now the question becomes, what happens next? How will Democrats fight back? How will Republicans respond? And what does this mean for millions of immigrants watching from home? Because behind the headlines, behind the cheering crowds, behind the tweets and sound bites, the future of the immigration
can ignite an entire
shifting.
country. What does that say about the country? And what does it say about the man holding the microphone? We close this story by looking forward, toward the election, toward immigration policy, and toward the American identity crisis unfolding in real time. Because Trump's attack on Ilhan Omar wasn't just a moment, it was a message, and Washington heard it loud and clear. Within 48 hours of that speech, campaign strategists from both parties scrambled into action. Republicans sensed opportunity, Democrats sensed danger, immigrant communities sensed fear, and the political battlefield shifted, whether America is ready or not. Let's start with the GOP, because their internal reaction reveals everything about where Trump plans to go next. Behind closed doors, top Republican operatives quietly admitted the truth. Trump is setting the frame for 2026, its immigration, its identity, its culture. And they're not wrong. His attack on Ilhan Omar and his focus on immigration outside of Europe wasn't about policy, it was about emotion. And emotion wins elections more than facts ever will. But here's where things get complicated. Not all Republicans agree with this strategy. Some worried Trump's rhetoric energizes the base, but alienates moderates and suburban voters. One GOP strategist said privately, "This rhetoric turns off suburban voters." But others argue the exact opposite, that immigration fear turns out turnout, creates urgency, and pushes undecided voters rightward. So I want to ask you, do you think Trump's rhetoric helps Republicans or hurts them in the long run? Comment below. Now, shift to the Democrats. For them, Trump's speech was a warning siren. Ilhan Omar's team saw a surge in threats. Immigration advocates saw panic in their communities. Democratic candidates saw fundraising spikes, but also new pressure. Because speeches like this force Democrats into a corner. If they defend Omar too aggressively, Republicans say they're weak on immigration. If they don't defend her strongly enough, progressives accuse them of abandoning minorities. If they try to change the topic, they look scared. Trump knows this. That's why he talks about Omar. She divides Democrats almost as much as she unites Republicans. But what about the people who aren't watching this like a chess game? Let's talk about immigrants across America, the families Trump indirectly targeted. In cities like Minneapolis, Seattle, Columbus, and Dearborn, community centers reported spikes in calls, parents asking if their children are safe, workers asking if immigration rules are changing, students asking if they should avoid public events. This speech didn't just land politically, it landed emotionally. And emotion shapes culture. America is entering a decade of demographic transformation, and transformation scares people. It excites some, it threatens others, it divides everyone. Trump's message taps directly into those anxieties. But here's the big question. Is Trump reacting to America changing, or is he trying to stop that change? Think about that, and tell me your thoughts below. Now, let's talk about Ilhan Omar herself. Her team is preparing for a surge in attention, both supportive and hostile. Progressives are rallying behind her, conservatives are celebrating Trump's critique, and security officials are monitoring threats closely. But at the core, she represents something larger, a version of America that is still emerging. Trump represents the America that many people fear is disappearing. Omar represents the America many believe is coming. And that is why this clash matters more than the speech itself. Because this isn't about two politicians, this is about two visions of the country. One vision is nostalgic, protective, wary of change. The other is diverse, global, and rapidly evolving. And right now, America is being asked, loudly, painfully, emotionally, which future do you choose? This is why Trump's speech was more than an attack. It was a referendum, not on Ilhan Omar, but on identity. Not on immigration law, but on cultural belonging. Not on policy, but on the soul of the nation. We've entered an era where political speeches feel less like debates and more like fault lines, and Trump just placed his foot squarely on one of the deepest ones. So, as we wrap this three-part story, I'll leave you with this. Does America want to move backward or forward? And who gets to decide what forward actually means? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This conversation isn't ending here, because as long as Trump keeps talking, and as long as America keeps changing, these battles will define the next election, the next generation.